السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته والحمد لله حمدا شاكرين والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. I pray all of you are doing well, inshallah, in this great day, greatest of all days, in fact, the day of Jummah in the great month of Ramadan. This is another Jummah we have now in Ramadan, and we ask Allah makes it a source of nur, a light for us, for all of us, and barakah, inshallah, and for the weeks ahead, inshallah, and of course, as a big investment, inshallah, for the day that we stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the thing I want to speak about today, inshallah, in fact, is something I think is extremely important, and this has been the source of my research, my academic research, my writing, for at least now many years, and this is about understanding human empathy. And I want us to think about this in light of what we're facing right now as a nation, as a society, as a world, with the coronavirus pandemic. How does this connect with empathy? How do we understand it in light of the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Empathy is one of those, human characteristics, attributes that's a possibility in a person exhibiting empathy. The moment he understands there's the importance of perspective taking. If he's able to perspective take with another person and try and see something from another person's perspective, that is going to be his opportunity to show or exhibit empathy to a person. And I want us to think about, number one, think about the surah in the Quran, Surah Al-Duha. And Surah Al-Duha is very interesting, in fact, in understanding or learning about empathy and how it relates, in fact, to social behavior, how it relates to the way that we're supposed to be treating one another. If you think initially about what coronavirus, this pandemic has created in the world about empathic, what we should understand as empathic connection, in the fact that we can now relate more perhaps to other people because we're all, so to speak, suffering from the same thing. We have the same concerns, same worries, same kind of anxieties, maybe same apprehensions. People across, other parts of the country, other parts of the world have those same kind of anxieties and concerns. We understood what it meant to be in a state of lockdown. And if you think about those who really suffer, in a situation of a real lockdown, I mean, this is only a temporary measure, of course, and we still have all the amenities that we need to survive, of course, with ease. But if you think about those who are living in real lockdown in places like Palestine, in Gaza, those who are victims of apartheid, like in Al Khalil, in Hebron, in Syria, in Myanmar, in Burma, in Kashmir, I mean, real lockdown. And they face, of course, the savagery of the state, that suppresses them and enforces that lockdown on them. We ask Allah that Allah eases difficulties that they face. So if you think about the way that we are supposed to be able to relate, therefore, to other people in other circumstances, in other countries who also suffer at this time of a kind of a globalized pandemic, it's about creating empathic outlooks towards other people. In Surah Al-Duha, it was a surah, of course, revealed during the time of difficulty in the Prophet's life, because he had to Alhamdulillah. He had of course, the first revelations, and the first revelation of the Quran from Surah Al-Alaq, and then it was a delay and a gap, and then the mushrikeen began to taunt him, began to say things like, وَدَّعَهُ رَبَّهُ, his Lord has abandoned him, his Lord has abandoned him. So of course, the feeling, therefore, in their saying your Lord has abandoned him, was they were trying to say that is that what your Lord has revealed to you, and is that the end of it then? And then Allah reveals Surah Al-Duha. And Surah Al-Duha, of course, it's very hope-inspiring. It's remarkable. The symbols there, Wal-Duha, Wal-Layli Idha Saja, the opening, the morning brightness, and the night when it's silent and still. Ma wadda'aka rabbuka wa ma qala, your Lord has not abandoned you, nor does he scorn you. Now, in that surah, what Allah does is Allah reminds the Prophet ﷺ about his previous time, about what life was like before the present time. This is very important for empathy. So Allah in the Quran says, Alam yajidaka yatiman fa'awa. Didn't we find him an orphan and sheltered him, right? وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًا فَهَدَى, and found him wandering and guided him. وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى, and found him poor and enriched him. So then Allah says, فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ. And so as for the orphan, don't be cruel to the orphan, because of course the Prophet was once an orphan. So Ibn Kathir says the beautiful thing about really powerful in terms of understanding empathy. He says, وَذْكُرْ يُتْمَكْ. He says, so remember you're being an orphan. So remember when you were once an orphan. And that's really what empathy is. Remember when you were once an orphan, And then when Allah says, وَأَمَّا السَّائِلَ فَلَا تَنْهَرْ. And as for the one that comes to ask, don't push him away. He says, وَذْكُرْ فَقْرَكْ. It means Allah is saying, remember when you were poor. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And that's really powerful. If you think about وَذْكُرْ يُتْمَكْ وَذْكُرْ فَقْرَكْ. Remember your state of being an orphan, and remember when you were also poor. And that therefore that should engender in you, of course, and the realization is, of course, for all of us, if we remember where we were once upon a time, that should engender within us a real sense of empathy and a mercy, an emotion bearing towards other people who are now in that same situation we were in once upon a time. So we have examples of cognitive empathy and affective empathy. Try and understand something from someone else's perspective and try and feel for someone based upon what they're experiencing at this present moment in time. So it's like, for example, when you're looking at your neighbors or you're looking at your family members or just people in the street, you can easily kind of relate to what they might be worrying about, what they might be thinking about, or people, for example, in the supermarket, same kind of thing happens. But this is really a life lesson about trying to become really empathic people, very, very powerful. In the Prophet's life, there are so many examples that he was teaching his companions, and of course, all of us, the importance of showing empathy towards others. Look, for example, at the very famous hadith about the man who comes along and he says, Ya Rasulullah, idhanni bizina. Ya Rasulullah, allow me to commit adultery. And the Prophet then says this to the man, the young man, he says, Atuhibbuhu li ummik, would you like that for your mother? The man, of course, says, no, indeed, of course, Ya Rasulullah, I would never like that for my mother. And then the Prophet says, وَلَا النَّاسِ يُحِبُّونَهُ لِأُمَّهَاتِهِمْ. And neither would people, the world, and nas, just general, neither would people love that for their mothers. So if you wouldn't love it for your mothers, you must be able to feel and understand the same thing exists, of course, in a different geographic, in a different home. Just like you wouldn't like it for your own mother, neither would they like it for their mothers. Then the Prophet says, Atuhibbuhu li ibnatik, would you like that for your daughter? And the man said, of course, no, by Allah, I would never like that for my daughter. And the Prophet then says, وَلَا النَّاسِ يُحِبُّونَ لِبَنَاتِهِمْ. Neither would the people love that for their daughters. And then the man he's realizing, the Prophet says, Atuhibbu li khalatik, would you like that for your aunt? No, by Allah. وَلَا النَّاسِ يُحِبُّونَ لِخَالَاتِهِمْ. Neither would people like that for their aunts. Would you like that for your sister? أختك. He says, no, by Allah. وَلَا النَّاسِ يُحِبُّونَ لِأَخَوَاتِهِمْ. Neither would people like that for their own daughters. As it was making him realize the importance of trying to see the world from somebody else's perspective. The same thing that you wouldn't like for yourself, neither would you wouldn't like that for somebody else, because in reality and in essence, these are called human codes of recognizability. Therefore, we can recognize one another because in so many ways we're identical. We're just the same. If you think about things like fears and hopes and dreams, just take a survey of what people's hopes are, what people's dreams are, and you'd see that they tally up because people's hopes tend to be quite similar. Everybody wants security. Everybody wants peace. Everybody wants a nice home. Everybody wants happiness. These are all kind of just general hopes that people would have in life. And it's to therefore realize and understand that. There could be, of course, differences between them, between people, but that should never do away with our obligation of showing empathy to them. Now that's when it doesn't happen, that's when people otherize. And when they otherize, they run the risk of dehumanizing people. If you otherize and dehumanize, it means you're creating in-groups and out-groups. That means you're looking at other people as like distant entities, as culturally different to you, as geographically displaced, as others. You have structural otherness of people who are maybe blind or who are deaf or mentally ill or physically handicapped. And you think, well, they don't belong in my world because they stay somewhere else. And I don't see them, no need to see them because they're just others outside of me. And that's when you don't show empathy. So when you don't show empathy, this is what's going to happen. You're going to create this in your mind, in your mental state. These other people. But remember, of course, all of us have a mental canvas, and on that mental canvas, we can paint beautiful things, beautiful things in our minds about other people. But imagine if you have a mental canvas and you're painting on that mental canvas. You only have, like, let's say, black ink, and you only have a wide brush, okay? And you're painting just with one color, the black ink, let's say, wide brushes, okay? And you're making broad strokes, and you have a wide brush. At the end of the day, what is it that you're going to create in your mind about the other person if you're only using, one color, and it's a wide brushes and it's broad strokes? Then what you're disallowing is nuances. You're disallowing fine grades of distinction, of beauty, because it's all one and the same, and it's just like, one and the same thing. There's no distinction. There's no identification in that, and that's really how we create others, and how we create, entities that run the risk, therefore, of being victims, targets of abuse, and targets of mistreatment, targets of, in worst cases, mass violence and genocide. And this is exactly what happens, in examples of genocide, of Rwanda, of Bosnia, of the Holocaust, this the picture is created of this monster. And what people tend to do then is that they impute the worst attributes within themselves onto other people, and that's how they otherize them. But in all of this, and what they're not doing is that they're never, of course, showing empathy to those people. It's interesting, in fact, in the Holocaust, this, of course, was the design, the idea of the architects of Nazism, of Himmler and Höss and Adolf Eichmann. They used to, of course, have summary executions in Auschwitz and Birkenau. I mean, I've seen the location where they would line them up on the wall and then they shoot them dead. Now they have a memorial there at that exact site. But what tended to happen was that there was, the closer you are to the killing, in an example like that, the more the chance is for a person, of course, to begin to show empathy for the victim, to feel a sense of sorrow for him, because he's seeing the pain, he's seeing the anguish on the face of the victim, he's seeing the blood, he's seeing all of the pleading, begging for his life, he's seeing all of this, and therefore that could make a person feel a sense of empathy. But the more distant you are, then you're not going to see that. Like altitude has an effect on attitude. A very famous book by Grossman called On Killing. It's called On Killing, and it's about this relation between altitude and attitude. So if you think today, for example, about those who fly drones and those who are in the sky and they're throwing down their bombs, they don't see the victims. They won't see the mess. They won't see devastation. They won't see a loss of life. They won't see the mother crying for her son. There was none of that because they're just too high up to see it. And so therefore, and then the gas chambers came into play. And the gas chambers were interesting because, they could simply in their minds think, it's not us that are killing anybody, it's the fans. The fans are running and the fans are doing it. And so therefore it's displaced. Your responsibility is displaced because you don't have any sense of moral responsibility anymore. And so therefore the whole sense of proximity, closeness to killing is now altered, and therefore that sense of distancing is there. We have to learn to be close to people, to really understand people, close to people. Look at this example. If you think about when the Prophet ﷺ came back into Mecca, in the Fath al-Mecca, of course, it was an amazing achievement. It was the opening, it was the conquest, it was like Fath al-Mubina. This was, in fact, it's interesting because many Mufassirin, they say that the Fath al-Mubina, like in Surah Al-Fath, is not even Fath al-Mecca, it's Hudaybiyah. Because Hudaybiyah was the precursor. Hudaybiyah was the event so important, where they had to make some compromises, but at the end of the day, the victory was for Islam always. When this happened, imagine the Prophet coming back into Mecca. Now, of course, the Meccans, they really knew about the magnanimity, they knew about the character, they knew about the values, they knew about the mercy of our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But they still, of course, there was people who were spreading the propaganda, right? The propaganda, trying to, of course, otherize the Prophet Sallam, trying to make him seem as if a distant, person who has no good interest for them. And this is going around, of course, this is preventing them many times to become Muslims in the first place. Now, when the Prophet came back into Mecca, there was an elderly man. He was the father of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Now, what Abu Bakr did is that when they came into Mecca, Abu Bakr, he goes to bring his father. He goes to fetch his father, and so he brought his father, who was an old man, and so when he brought his father, the Prophet said this to him. The Prophet says to Abu Bakr, he says to him, هل تركت الشيخ في بيته حتى أكون أنا آتيه إليه. If only you left the old man in his home, so I could have gone to see him instead. And it's a remarkable, those words of the Prophet, if only you left the old man in his home, so I could have gone to see him. Meaning the Prophet realized maybe he was inconvenienced, by having to come and see the Prophet. And Abu Bakr says, no, Ya Rasulullah, he has more need to see you than you have need to see him. And of course, Abu Bakr's words are true, but the Prophet was just showing, therefore, we have to think about how other people might be feeling at any given time, how they might be thinking and feeling at any given time. Imagine, for example, this is a good example because it relates to like the Quran, when Allah mentions in Surah An-Naml the example of Bilqis, when Sulaiman alayhi salam has this amazing display of his army of humans and birds and jinn, and Allah says, they're all arranged, and then they come to the valley of the ants, and the female ant spoke and says, oh ants, enter your homes. You don't want Sulaiman and his army to crush you, and they won't perceive. And Allah says, فَتَبَسَّمَ ضَاحِكًا مِنْ قَوْلِهَا. Sulaiman smiled and laughed when he heard the words, and he made a beautiful dua to Allah. ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وأدخلني برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. My Lord, inspire me to thank you for what you blessed me with and blessed my parents with, and for me to enter and for me to do good deeds that you're pleased with, and enter me, with your mercy amongst your pious servants. And then Allah says that the hudhud, the bird, was missing. So Sulaiman says, Mali la ara al-hudhud am kana min al-ghaibin. Mali la ara al-hudhud. So why don't I see the hoopoe, the bird, that's supposed to be from his army, or is it just absconded and gone? And then he becomes angry and he says, لَأُعَذِّبَنَّهُ عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا أَوْ لَأَذْبَحَنَّهُ أَوْ لَيَأْتِيَنِّ بِسُلْطَانٍ مُبِينٍ. I'm going to give it a severe punishment, or I'm going to slaughter it, or it should come to me with a good excuse for being absent. And so then Allah says, when the bird comes to Sulaiman, the bird says to Sulaiman that, I've come from, it says, it's amazing, it says, that I've learned something, some knowledge that encompassed me that didn't encompass you. I've learned something that you haven't learned. I know about something that you don't know even. It's amazing. And they said, I've come from the Bilqis, and I've come from news from Saba. Then he says, I saw people who worship the sun. And I saw that there's a woman, she's a queen, and the people that worship the sun. Anyway, then he sends a dispatch. He says, okay, if you're telling the truth, then go and give this message to her. Send this like dispatch to her. And then he goes and does that. Now, when she receives that dispatch, she says to her people, she said, look, this letter has come from Sulaiman. And it says in it, إِنَّهُ مِن Sulaiman wa innahu bismillahir rahmanir rahim. It says this is from Sulaiman, and in the letter, it says, in the name of Allah, the most gracious. And she says, Aftuni fi amri. Tell me, what should I do in a situation? To her noble ones and her, imagine her military. And they said, there's nothing for you to worry about. We have power, we have strength. Why are we going to stress over Sulaiman? And so, but then it's amazing. She says, إِنَّ الْمُلُوكَ إِذَا دَخَلُوا قَرْيَةً أَفْسَدُوهَا وَجَعَلُوا أَعِزَّةَ أَهْلِهَا أَذِلَّةً وَكَذَلِكَ يَفْعَلُونَ. She says, you see, kings, whenever they enter into a place, into a town, they ruin it, they spoil it, they corrupt it. And they make the ones who are like high nobility into ones who are low and inferior. Now then it says, وَكَذَلِكَ يَفْعَلُونَ, and that's how they do it. Now this part, Ibn Abbas, he says, قَالَ الرَّبِّ, Allah is saying this. So the last part is saying Allah is affirming, Allah is saying that that's how they do things. That's what tends to happen in life and in human history. And so you can imagine, therefore, that the fear, yeah? So if you imagine Abu Bakr's father, therefore, the elderly man, imagine the sense of fear he would have been feeling. And so when the Prophet says to him, to Abu Bakr, why didn't you leave the old man in his home so I could have gone out to see him? The Prophet then it says in the narration, it says, أَجْلَسُهُ بَيْنِ يَدَيْهِ. The Prophet sat him down before him. Not the Prophet telling him, sit down, please. No, the Prophet sat him down before him. And then he wiped over his chest to cool him down, calm down. It's cool, we're all in this together. You know, he put his blessed hand on the man's chest. And then he said to him, Aslim, now submit. Then the man submitted. So if you think about this beautiful narration about the words the Prophet spoke, about the behavior the Prophet did, you know, the kind of the culture he created in showing his companions how we should treat one another with that really sense of dignity and respect and empathy for understanding other people's feelings, other people's, like, you know, what they might be feeling of apprehension. It's beautiful to have that sense of cognitive empathy and effective empathy. Look at a beautiful example of effective empathy in the example of the Prophet. You know, once a man came to the Prophet's home and he said, and he wanted to invite the Prophet to his own home for food. And so he comes along and he knocks on the Prophet's door and he says, Ya Rasulullah, this is da'wat, this is, like, you know, invitation for food in my home. And who was in the Prophet's home? His beloved wife, Aisha, al-Mu'mineen, radiallahu anha. She was sitting there. And she, of course, heard this because there was a very small home. And so now when the Prophet had the invitation, the Prophet asked, he says, وَهَذِهِ, and this one, meaning this one in the feminine, meaning Aisha, what about her? And the man said, no, this is specifically for you, Ya Rasulullah, for you, you know. And the Prophet said, I can't come. The man came later on in the day and he said, Ya Rasulullah, invitation still stands, you know, for you. Invitation for food. And the Prophet again says, وَهَذِهِ, and this one. And he said, no. And he said, no, this is for you only, Ya Rasulullah. And then the Prophet says, I can't come. The man came the third time and he said the same thing. Food, invitation. The Prophet says, وَهَذِهِ, and what about this one? Meaning Aisha. The Prophet said, yes. And the Prophet then says, well, we're both coming then. You know, just to appreciate the feeling of somebody else not being invited, right? And so maybe she would have felt like, you know, well, let's what if you went and I'm going to be stuck by myself at home? It's just a very beautiful hadith to make us really understand and appreciate other people also feel, and the same kind of feelings that we have, they also have. There's a very funny short story about there was once a zoo. There was a boy waiting with his grandmother, queuing up to enter into a zoo. And so what happens is that there was a local artist, and the local artist was face painting on people's faces, like the paws, tiger paws, you know, on their face, just to get them into the mode of having fun in the zoo. And so the boy is with his grandmother and he's watching it all happen. And then there's a girl who's like behind him, and she comes to him and she says, you know, you have so many freckles on your face. There's no space on your face to get the tiger paws because you have so many freckles on your face. He's obviously making fun of him. And the boy then put his head down like in shame. The grandmother heard what that girl said to the boy. And so what she said to him is that the grandmother then came down, you know, to the boy and said to him, you know, you have a beautiful face. She said, when I was young, all I wanted was a face with freckles, actually. The grandmother telling the young boy. And the boy says, really? And the grandmother says, yeah, you know, I can't think of anything more beautiful on a face than freckles. Can you think of something? And the boy looks in his grandmother's face and said, yeah, wrinkles, you know. And it's a beautiful moment. It's just showing, therefore, the boy was able to relate to the grandmother, that the grandmother, of course, you know, she sees herself, of course, every day with wrinkles. And for the boy then to say to the grandmother that perhaps the most beautiful thing is not in fact my freckles, it's in fact your wrinkles, it's a beautiful exchange between two people. It's a beautiful story. But this outlines, therefore, the importance of having effective empathy. And so there's so much, therefore, I think we can really take lessons from in the way that our Prophet treated people. One of the really beautiful things we should try and learn now, I think, that because there's so much kind of credit, of course, we have to give, and we're giving to the NHS and the people who are working, the frontline workers, really, in as medics. Remember, of course, that those places where they work in hospitals are not just catering for the needs of those who are inflicted with COVID-19 coronavirus. They're made up of people who have a range of illnesses and disabilities, from things to do with the mind, things to do with eyes, ears, things to do with the central nervous system, the heart, cancer patients, so many illnesses, and we can run the risk of structurally othering other people the moment we think that such people are less than us, because we might find ourselves in a state of being in good health and they're not, and therefore they just kind of have to be apart from me. Look at this. In Medina, there was a man who was blind, and the Prophet would tell his companions, he would say to them, انطلقوا بنا إلى البصير من بني واقف. He would say to his companions, let's take us to the man with vision from Banu Waqif, with a man with vision who can see. But the man, of course, was blind. But look at how the Prophet just changed and inverted the perspective and the perception. Look at the shift in paradigm to make them realize that, look, we don't have to see, of course, every illness as an illness, as a kind of as a disability. Because the moment we put that in our minds, a disability, or such a person is like this, and that's how they're going to be defined forever, then we run the risk of not giving them the full credit, not giving them the full value as human beings. And the Prophet says to the people, take to the man who has vision. And the ulama, they discuss this hadith in light of the verse in the Quran where Allah says speak about the people who see like things in the earth, in the journey, but they don't contemplate. It doesn't benefit them. And Allah says that it's not the heart, it's not the eyes that grow blind, but it is the hearts that grow blind. And that man's heart from Banu Waqif, his heart was not blind, and therefore he had vision and he could see and perceive. It's a beautiful way of seeing it. Therefore, the person was giving the man a sense of, a feeling of empowerment. And how important, therefore, is that feeling of empowerment? How do we empower people? Look, there was a woman who was mentally ill in the Prophet's time in Medina. It says, "Kana fi aqliha shay'un," she had a mental illness. Her mind was not working properly. And when she came, she says, "Ya Rasulullah, inna li ilayka haja." I have a need. I need for you to fulfill for me. She had something she needed to take care of. And so the Prophet then says to her, he said, "Ya fulan, oh the mother of so and so, unzuri ay sakaki shiti hatta aqdi laki hajatak." He says, oh mother of so and so, look to see which street you'd like to stand on. Meaning, wherever you feel comfortable, you go there, and then we can talk about whatever issue is that you're having, And look, it's beautiful because he began by calling her, oh, the mother of so and so. That means she's already somebody of importance. That means she's already someone people are dependent, kids are dependent on her. She already has a place and position in society if she's a mother of so and so, subhanAllah. So look how the person is giving her a sense of empowerment, giving a sense of deep credit, deep sense of value, empowerment. And this is how we're going to speak to people, how we need to interact with people, always make people feel as if they're really in control, that they have so much to offer, give people a sense of hope and happiness, always be encouraging with people, don't be negative, pessimistic. The person was so encouraging. Look at how he even transformed things. There was like, look at, Medina was called Yathrib. Yathrib is from, Tathrib, which is blame. Like in the Quran, when Allah speaks about Yusuf alayhi salam and his brothers, and the brothers, they realized it's Yusuf, and they were seeking forgiveness, and Yusuf says, La tathrib alaykum al-yawm, there's no blame on you today. The Prophet changed the name Yathrib into Medina. Medina is Medina to Nabi, it's the city of the Prophet ﷺ. There were people he would meet. For example, he met one girl and he asked, what is her name? And she said, my name is Asiya. Asiya meaning the one who is sinful. the sinful girl. And what kind of a name is that? Someone gave her the name Asiya. He said, no, your name is Jamila. Your name is beautiful. That's your name now, Jamila. He met a tribe and he asked, what is your name? And they said, we're the tribe shape of dalala, of misguidance. That's what we're called. We call ourselves the tribe of misguidance. He says, no, you're now called the tribe of huda, of guidance. You know, and it was therefore just giving a sense of encouragement, optimism in people. I think it's a great lesson for us to learn. Therefore, always see people through the lens of empathy. There's so much more to say that I want to say, inshallah, but I'm going to save that, inshallah, for next time as we continue, inshallah, our examination of the importance of empathy, inculcating that in our lives, how we treat one another, our loved ones, and also those outside of us in the streets and all people in the world. I think if we can really take that to heart, it will really improve our human situation. May Allah put barakah in everything. May Allah bless you guys, inshallah, in Miftah Institute for the amazing work you guys do in the hospitals, you know, helping NHS care workers and others in dispatching to them foodstuff and necessary supplies. And of course, looking after neighbors and people in the streets. May Allah make that a good work, inshallah, for all of you, for all of us, inshallah, for forever. Ameen. May Allah bless you. Jazakumullah khairan wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.